Hey, everybody. I hope that you're well, and I also hope that you are having a good day so far. Today, we'll be doing our grade 6 English lesson on restrictive and non restrictive elements. And before we start with our lesson, we're going to log on to aplusstudents.ca with our username as well as our password. Then we're going to select the subject of English Language Arts, grade 6. Then we're going to scroll down up until we get to the chapter of restrictive and non-restrictive elements. All right. So our chapter is restrictive and non-restrictive elements. Our subject is English Language Arts, grade 6, and our lessons that we are focusing on is what does the punctuation suggest and commas with non-restrictive elements. All right, so we're going to first go over what does punctuation suggest, or basically what restrictive and non-restrictive elements are. And then when we are done with that, and then we'll go to A plus students.ca, and that is where we're going to continue with our tutorial lesson as well as our test. All right. So a restrictive element, right, is a in a sentence is necessary in order for a reader to identify exactly who or what is being discussed. Remember, when we talk about who or what is being discussed, then we usually say it's either the subject, right? And that will basically tell us who or what is being discussed within a sentence, right? For example, the teacher who is retiring is being honored with an award on Friday. And it is important also to be specific when it comes to, for example, identifying exactly who or what is being discussed, because sometimes we might have a specific sentence and then the sentence doesn't necessarily exactly pinpoint to who is being discussed, right? So, for example, here it says the teacher who is retiring is being honored with an award on Friday, right? Which means that the the restrictive clause, right, within that sentence, it helps a reader to identify which teacher is being honored, right? So if we were to identify which teacher is being honored, then we can say the one who is retiring. Because if we just say that the teacher is being honored with an award on Friday, and then there's maybe 15 teachers in the school or more, and then everybody's going to wonder, like, which teacher is going to be awarded, right? So which teacher is being awarded? Whereas if we are being specific and we're saying like the teacher who is retiring is being honored with an award on Friday, now we know, okay, out of the 15 or 16 teachers that's at the school, this one is retiring. Mrs. Is retiring, right? So we specifically know that this specific teacher is going to retire, so she's going to be getting an award on Friday. All right. So basically, the underlined, which is this teacher who is retiring, it helps the reader to identify the teachers being honored. The teachers being honored with an award on Friday. So without the restrictive clause, right, a reader doesn't know which teacher is being honored, right? And I mentioned that if you don't specifically show which teacher is being honored, right, then none of us will know which teacher is being honored. It's like everybody's just gonna go like, yo, which teacher is being honored? Like, is it this one? Is it Mrs. Is it Mrs. Is it Mr. Whoever, right? Because we don't specifically know. So now a non-restrictive element, right? A non-restrictive element, it provides information that is supplemental, right? Meaning that it is not necessarily in order for a reader to identify who or what is being discussed. All right, so I'm going to explain again, right? So a restrictive element, right? In a sentence, it's basically, it's necessary for us to identify who or what is being discussed, right? And they made an example of the teacher who's retiring is being honored with an award. If we didn't specifically say who is retiring, right? If we didn't specifically, they didn't mention who is retiring, then, and they only put there the teacher, is being honored with an award, then we would have wondered, right, which teacher is being honored, because they are not, let's say, being specific as to which specific teacher is being honored, right? Because if you think of the amount of teachers at your school, right, and they just say that, okay, so on Friday, a teacher is going to be honored with an award, then everybody's going to wonder, is it Mrs. Is it Mr. Who? Is it Mr. Right? So everybody's going to wonder which specific teacher is being honored. But as soon as we, for example, say, right, if we specifically show or identify who or what is being discussed by saying, let's say in the sentence, the teacher who is retiring is being honored with an award, now we know, okay, so Miss Nadine is going to retire. She had mentioned that already. So now we know Miss Nadine is going to get an award on Friday, right? And how do you know Miss Nadine is going to get an award? Because we are specifying by saying that the teacher who is retiring is being honored with an award. So as far as we know, Miss Nadine said that she's going to retire. Miss Nadine's already at the age, for example, of retiring, right? Miss Nadine had mentioned already, or somebody had mentioned already, that Miss Nadine is retiring. So now we know who the teacher is that is going to be honored with an award on Friday, right? So that is a restrictive element. So a restrictive element in a sentence, they say it is necessary in order for a reader, right, to identify exactly who or what is being discussed, right? So yes, the teacher's being discussed, but which teacher's being discussed? Discuss the one who is retiring, right? So they don't specifically have to say the name, but at least we know which specific teacher it is based on the extra information that was given, right? And sometimes in a sentence, right, they will either, for example, say, they'll either maybe put a comma there by, showing exactly who is being honored or whoever that they are basically talking about, right? But when it comes to a restrictive element, right, it is not set off within a commas. It is just a straight sentence that just says that the teacher who is retiring is being honored with an award. Remember, sometimes without a comma, then you also won't be able to identify or be able to separate who is actually who or what they're actually talking about. But in this case, the teacher who is retiring, we can literally see there who specifically they are talking about. So which means that if we like for example, by mentioning who is retiring, right, this now helps the reader to identify which teacher is being honored without even having to put a comma there to separate who or to identify who or what is being discussed or who we're actually talking about. And if we weren't supposed to, if there was no restrictive elements, right, if there's no restrictive elements within that specific sentence, then we wouldn't have been able to know who or what is being discussed, or who or what is being, or who specifically is being awarded with an award on Friday. Then we have non restrictive elements, right? And a non restrictive element. So a non-restrictive element, it provides information, right? That is supplemental, meaning that it is not in order for a reader to identify who or what is being discussed. Non-restricted information is always set off with commas, meaning non-restrictive elements, they always have a comma within that specific sentence, right? For example, the Golden Gate Bridge, which first opened in 1937, took over 4 years to build, right? So the Golden Gate Bridge, which first opened in 1937, took over 4 years to build. So if we look at this, I'm going to underline it, which first opened in 1937, we don't even have to actually mention that, right? Because let's say, for example, there is a goal, let's say they talk about a bridge, a well known bridge within your, either in your city, right? Then this extra information is not necessary because now we know what the Golden Gate Bridge is, right? So if it says that the Golden Gate Bridge, which opened in 1937, took over 4 years to build, right? Then it just means that it is this is unnecessary information because we don't necessarily have to say when it opened. All we can just say is that it took over 4 years to build, right? Because eventually, if we Google the Golden Gate Bridge, right, then we can say, ah, okay, so this bridge was first opened in 1937. But if we just discuss it randomly, then this information is not necessary. So here they're actually saying that the underlying information, which means this information, it is not required to interpret the sentence. All we can just say is the Golden Gate Bridge took over 4 years to build. That is clear. Unless you want extra information about the Golden Gate Bridge, then what do? We Google that. So without knowing that the Golden Gate Bridge opened in 1937, right? As long as we know that, it took 4 years to build, right? Or we at least still have a brief information about the Golden Gate Bridge. All right, so we're going to move along. So now we're going on to aplusstudents.ca, and we are going to go over some of the restrictive and non-restrictive elements again, and then we're going to do our test. All right. So we're going to, what does the punctuation suggest? Okay, so once again, before we go on to our activity, right, it says that a restrictive element within a sentence is necessary in order for a reader to identify exactly what or who is being discussed, right? And restrictive elements are not set off with commas. You can just give a straightforward sentence with no commas, and we will know who is being discussed, who or what is being discussed. All right. So once again, before we continue, right, it says the teacher who is, as I mentioned earlier on, retiring is being honored with an award on Friday. So that sentence that is underlined, right, is a restrictive clause and it helps a reader to identify which teacher is being honored, right? That is without even putting commas to say, like, okay, this is specific teacher is being honored. You just straightforward say that the teacher who is being honored is, or the teacher who is retiring is being honored with an award on Friday. Or specifically just saying the music teacher, then we know it's the music teacher, right? And that is without any commas, right? Yet we still know who and what is being discussed. If we did not have that information, then we wouldn't have known who or what is being discussed within that sentence. And we say without a restrictive clause, we call that a restrictive clause, right? And without that restrictive clause, we wouldn't have known which teacher is being honored. All right. So we can then say a non-restrictive element, right? It provides information that is supplementary and it's not in order for a reader to identify who or what is being discussed. So with a restricted element, right, they need to be specific as to who is being discussed or what is being discussed. Whereas with a non-restrictive element, right, they're saying that it is not necessary in order for a reader to identify who or what is being discussed. It's not even that much important, right? And non-restrictive elements, right, it is set off with commas. And then we made an example of the Golden Gate Bridge, which first opened in 1937, took over 4 years to build, right? Which means that this information that is underlined, it is not necessary, right? It is not necessary in order for us to interpret the sentence. We can basically just say the Golden Gate Bridge took over 4 years to build. Like in my country, my city, one of our main attractions is, let's maybe say, one of our big malls is called the Waterfront, right? And we can maybe just say it took over X amount of years to build, right? Or to get to its specific state without all the other information, because all of us know where the waterfront is, or we know about Table Mountain. That is also one of our major um, things that stands out within our country or our city, right? So anything that somebody really know about, like the Golden Gate Bridge, right? We don't need extra information unless you can go and search the web. All right. So now we're going to do an activity and then we're going to our test. So it says, what does the following suggest, right? The band's vocalist, right? Bella Turner wrote all the lyrics for the new album which chronicles the experience of her ancestors as they migrated from Europe to the United States. So the band's vocalist, Ballad Turner, wrote all the lyrics for the new album, which chronicles the experiences of her ancestors as they migrated from Europe to the United States. And if we really specifically look at that sentence, right, it asks, what does it suggest? Yeah, it can suggest that there's more than one vocalist, right? One that wrote it, but more than one that is specifically singing, especially when they say for their new album, right? Meaning it's not hers alone, right? So here it says the band's vocalist. It says Bella Turner is set off by a comma. There we have it. Specifically talking about Bella. And it's a non-restrictive element. Remember, if anything is set off by commas, then it is a non-restrictive element, and it could be removed from the sentence, and an identity of the band's vocalist could still be clear. Right? So if we were to remove Bella's name, like say for example, the band's vocalist wrote all the lyrics for their new album, then we don't specifically have to make mention of Bella Turner. We will know which specific one, or basically we will just know that okay, one of them wrote the lyrics, right, to all of their songs, right? But it basically still shows that there's more than one vocalist. All right, let's go to our test. All right. It says, what does the following sentence suggest? Remember, if something is set off with commas, then we call it a non-restrictive element. And if there's no commas, then we call that a restricted element, right? So what does the following sentence suggest? It says, visit Mrs. Walton's shop, Home Goods Central, for everything from basic hardware supplies to more unusual items such as vintage farm equipment, used sewing machines, and hand constructed wheelbarrows. So, what does the following sentence suggest? That it suggests that Mrs. Walton has other shops besides Home Goods Central, or does it suggest that Mrs. Walton's only shop is Home Goods Central? So, what does the following suggest? So, it suggests that Mrs. Walton has other shops beside Home Goods Central, or does it suggest that Mrs. Walton's only shop is Home Goods Central? What does it suggest? Okay, so let's say, for example, okay, so look here now, it says visit Mrs. Walton shops, right? Home Goods Central, right? It means that Home Goods Central is a shop that belongs to Mrs. Walton, right? For everything from basic hardware supplies to more unusual items, such as vintage farm equipment, used sewing machines, and hand constructed wheelbarrows, right? This specifically means that Mrs. Walton owns a shop. She owns Home Goods Central, right? That sells all these other things, right? So the comma that is there, it basically gives us indication that we can just say that it's like saying go to KFC, right? The chicken store or the chicken the chicken restaurant, right? For everything from burgers to chicken to whatever. So which means that we don't even have to add the chicken restaurant because we know KFC usually sells chicken, so we can actually remove that, right? So now they want to know, does it specify that Mrs. Walton has other shops besides Home Goods Central, or does it, for example, show that Mrs. Walton only the only shop is Home Goods Central by it saying visit her store, the Home Goods Central store, for everything from basic hardware supplies. Let's quickly go to this one, right? Which means that this comma that specifically states Home Goods Central, it shows that Mrs. Walton only has that one shop, right? What shop is Mrs. Walton's shop? The Home Goods Central shop. Let's quickly do the next one. That says the concert attendees who ordered tickets in advance may enter the arena as early as 4 p.m. Right? So just listen to the sentence again. It says the concert attendees. Let's say, for example, you go to a concert, right? Here it says the concert attendees who ordered tickets in advance may enter the arena as early as 4 p.m., right? So if you remember, sometimes if you order tickets, right, you can either order tickets on, I don't know what is the other names of the places, but in my country we call it compu tickets, right? So it's either you buy for tickets in advance online, or they'll sometimes say you can buy tickets at the door, right? So you can either buy your tickets online or by the door. So if you bought your tickets, let's say online, here they're saying then it means that you can enter as early as 4 p.m., right? It's the ones who bought the tickets in advance, the ones who bought the tickets online way before the date, right? Today, for example, that the concert is going to start, which means that all the other people who is buying tickets, let's say today for the concert, they cannot enter as early as 4 p.m. They are going to have to wait after 4 p.m. in order for them to enter, right? Because here it specifically says the concert attendees who ordered tickets in advance, right? So which means that this is a restricted element, right? This specifically states, for example, who or what can enter as early as 4 p.m. So who or what can enter as early as 4 p.m.? It is those who order tickets in advance, which means that if you did not order tickets in advance, then you cannot enter the arena as early as 4 p.m. right? So now the options are: some concert attendees did not order tickets in advance, or all concert attendees ordered tickets in advance. So if you look at this sentence again, it says the concert attendees who ordered tickets in advance may enter the arena as early as 4 p.m. So, does it suggest option one, that some of the concert attendees did not order tickets in advance, or does it mean all concert attendees ordered tickets in advance? What do you think? Don't you can maybe you can try. What do you think? Okay, so it means that only some of the concert attendees some concert attendees did not order tickets in advance, because if all well done, because remember, if all of the concert attendees ordered tickets in advance, then they wouldn't have said that the concert attendees who ordered tickets in advance may enter the arena at 4 p.m., because then they would have just said that everybody can enter the arena at 4 p.m., right? But it means that only some of the concert attendees, they did not order tickets in advance, which means that they cannot enter the arena as early as 4 p.m. Right? So well done. So that option one is correct. Yeah, as soon as you see a common, I must know it is a non-restrictive element. So what does the following sentence suggest? Every Labor Day, Mika and her family host an elaborate barbecue for the neighbors who stays in town. Mika and her family host all of their neighbors. Mika and her family host some of the neighbors. All right, so it says every Labor Day, Mika and her family host an elaborate barbecue for the neighbors who stays in town, right? So basically, they are organizing a barbecue for the neighbors who stays in town, right? Let's see. It says, do they host all of the neighbors or just some of the neighbors? Let's see. All right. So basically all of the neighbors, especially the ones who are in their town, right? They are hosting. So well done. When the film ended, right, Mr. Norman revealed that he had gone to college with the producer, Bobby Huffman. So when the film ended, Mr. Norman revealed that he had gone to college with the producer, comma, Bobby Huffman. So if we look at that sentence, what does it suggest? Does it suggest that the film had more than one producer, or only the film had more than one producer, or only one producer? All right. So basically, yeah, it says that when the film ended, Mr. Norman revealed that he had gone to college with the producer. And who is the producer? The producer is Bobby Huffman. So we can say that it only had, pardon, one producer. All right. Well done. Then in March 2014, the National Archives Museum, which is in Washington, D.C., right, opened an exhibit featuring original handwritten signatures of notable features such as John Hancock, Katharine Hepburn, and Jackie Robinson. There's only one National Archives Museum. There is more. Okay, I don't know why they are putting the questions over here. Okay. It says, does it mean that there's only one National Archives Museum? Or does it mean that there is more than one museum that is named the National Archived Museum? Does it mean that there's only one National Archives Museum? Or does it mean that there's more than one museum that is named the National Archive Museum? All right, so it says there's more than one. So it specifically states that there's only one, but the one in DC, right? But well done for trying. All right, let's do the last one and then we are done with our class. Okay, it says White House reporters who have been cleared for the president's speech may enter the briefing room in 15 minutes, the press secretary announced. Does it mean that only White House reporters have been cleared, or does it mean that all White House reporters have been cleared? What do you think? It says White House reporters who have been cleared for the president's speech may enter the briefing room in 15 minutes. Does it mean that option one, only some of the White House reporters have been cleared, or does it mean all of the White House reporters have been cleared? Option one or option two? Remember, they were saying that White House who have been cleared. So they're saying White House reporters who have been cleared. It's like saying we are going on an excursion with the school, but only those who paid can go on the excursion. Does it mean that everybody's going on the excursion, or does it mean that only the ones who paid are going on the excursion? So it says the White House reporters who have been cleared, right? So that can indicate that, maybe not everybody has been cleared, right? So it means that only some have been cleared. Because remember, when it comes to the White House, they don't just allow any person in the White House, right? Especially for the protection of the president. So what they do is they need to clear all of these the reporters, like do a background check and everything in order to see that, okay, you are eligible to come into the White House and to do a report while the president is doing his or her speech, or let's say his speech, right? So which means that not everybody was cleared, but well done. All right, so that is now the end of our lesson on restrictive and non-restrictive elements. Remember, when it comes to restrictive elements, it is not basically conformed by just commas. And also with restrictive elements, you need to be specific as to who or what is being discussed, right? All right, so that is the end of our lesson. Thank you very much, grade 6, for joining the class. I really hope that you're going to have a good evening further. So, till next time, goodbye. You're welcome.